Chapter by Chapter for West Grey Public Library, read by staff member Kimm Culkin. A Child's Christmas in Wales, Part 2. Years and years ago, when I was a boy, when there were wolves in Wales, and birds the colour of red flannel petticoats whisked by the harp-shaped hills, when we sang and wallowed all night and day in caves that smelt like Sunday afternoons in damp front farmhouse parlours, and we chased with the jawbones of deacons the English and the bears, before the motor car, before the wheel, before the Duchess-faced horse, when we rode the daft and happy hills bareback. It snowed, and it snowed. But here a small boy says, "It snowed last year too. I made a snowman, and my brother knocked it down, and I knocked my brother down, and then we had tea." But that was not the same snow, I say. Our snow was not only shaken from whitewash buckets down the sky. It came shawling out of the ground, and swam and drifted out of the arms and hands and bodies of the trees. Snow grew overnight on the roofs of the houses like a pure and grandfather moss, minutely ivied the walls, and settled on the postman, opening the gate like a dumb, numb thunderstorm of white, torn Christmas cards. Were there postmen then, too? With sprinkling eyes and wind-cherried noses, on spread frozen feet, they crunched up to the doors and mittened on them manfully, but all the children could hear was a ringing of bells. "You mean that the postman went rat-tat-tat and the doors rang?" "I mean that the bells that the children could hear were inside them." "I only hear thunder sometimes, never bells." "Well, there were church bells, too." "Inside them?" No. In the bat-black snow-white belfries, tugged by bishops and storks, and they rang their tidings over the bandaged town, over the frozen foam of the powder and ice cream hills, over the crackling sea. It seemed that all the churches boomed for joy under my window, and the weathercocks crew for Christmas on our fence. Get back to the postmen. They were just ordinary postmen, fond of walking and dogs and Christmas and the snow. They knocked on the doors with blue knuckles. Ours has got a black knocker. And then they stood on the white welcome mat in the little drifted porches and huffed and puffed, making ghosts with their breath, and jogged from foot to foot like small boys wanting to go out. And then the presents, after the Christmas box. And the cold postman, with a rose on his button nose, tingled down the tea-tray slithered run of the chilly glinting hill. He went in his ice-bound boots like a man on fishmonger's slabs. He wagged his bag like a frozen camel's hump, dizzily turned the corner on one foot, and by God he was gone. Get back to the presents. There were the useful presents, engulfing mufflers of the old coach days, and mittens made for giant sloths, zebra scarfs of a substance like silky gum that could be tug-of-war down to the galoshes, blinding tam-o'-shanters like patchwork tea-cozies, and bunny-suited busbies, and balaclavas for victims of head-shrinking tribes, from aunts who always wore wool next to the skin. There were mustached and rasping vests that made you wonder why the aunts had any skin left at all. And once I had a little crocheted nose-bag from an aunt now, alas, no longer whinnying with us, and pictureless books in which small boys, though warned with quotations not to, would skate on Farmer Giles's pond, and did, and drowned, and books that told me everything about the wasp except why. Go on to the useless presents. Bags of moist and many-coloured jelly babies, and a folded flag, and a false nose, and a tram conductor's cap, and a machine that punched tickets and rang a bell, never a catapult. Once by mistake that no one could explain, a little hatchet. and a celluloid duck that made, when you pressed it, a most unduck-like sound, a mewing moo that an ambitious cat might make who wished to be a cow, and a painting book in which I could make the grass, the trees, the sea, and the animals any color I please, and still the dazzling sky-blue sheep are grazing in the red field under the rainbow-billed and pea-green birds. Hard-boileds, toffee, fudge, and all sorts, crunches, cracknel, humbugs, glaciers, marzipan, and butterwelsh for the Welsh, and troops of bright tin soldiers who, if they could not fight, could always run, and snakes and families and happy ladders, and easy hobby games for little engineers complete with instructions, oh, easy for Leonardo, and a whistle to make the dogs bark to wake up the old man next door, to make him beat on the wall with his stick to shake our picture off the wall, and a packet of cigarettes. You put one in your mouth, and you stood at the corner of the street, and you waited for hours in vain for an old lady to scold you for smoking a cigarette, and then with a snark you ate it. And then it was breakfast under the balloons. Were there uncles in our house? There are always uncles at Christmas, the same uncles. And on Christmas mornings, with dog-disturbing whistle and sugar fags, I would scour the swathed town for the news of the little world, and find always a dead bird by the post office, or the white deserted swings, perhaps a robin, all but one of his fires out, men and women wading, scooping back from chapel with taproom noses and wind-bust cheeks, all albinos, huddled their stiff black jarring feathers against the irreligious snow. Mistletoe hung from the gas brackets in all the front parlors. There was sherry and walnuts and bottled beer and crackers by the dessert spoons, and cats in their furabouts watched the fires, and the high-heaped fire spat, all ready for the chestnuts and the mulling pokers. Some few large men sat in the front parlors without their collars, uncles almost certainly, trying their new cigars, holding them out judiciously at arm's length, returning them to their mouths, coughing, then holding them out again as though waiting for the explosion. And some few small aunts, not wanted in the kitchen, nor anywhere else for that matter, sat on the very edges of their chairs, poised and brittle, afraid to break, like faded cups and saucers.